Hello and welcome to the Believe Crew podcast. The business is you. I'm Jamie White, founder of Believe Crew and your host. Let's jump right in. This is Dave Hataj with Edgerton Gear out of Wisconsin. And I met Dave. He was a speaker at an event, and originally I wasn't planning on, staying for the speaker portion. And Dave just really spoke to my heart. Good thing my video was off because I was ugly crying in the background. And so I've really enjoyed getting to know him a little bit better and seeing what his business is about and the impact that he's making. And so I would love for all of you to hear a little bit more of his story. So Dave, welcome. And
thanks, Jamie.
I know we've kind of been talking back and forth here about everything. Usually I ask people, how did you get started in this? So you can start wherever you'd like, because the other thing we've been talking about is your craftsman course and where that's going. So start wherever you'd like.
Well, I think a good place to start is, and thanks for having me, by the way. It's always fun to talk to you. My story goes way, way back when I was a struggling teenager. Grew up in a home where my father, great business guy, but he struggled with alcoholism. He was an atheist. My mother was a very devout believer. So I grew up in this home that was, kind of split and very challenging to understand what I believe and why. So I followed in my dad's footsteps for quite a while, drank a lot, and had a radical conversion experience when I was 19. And then everybody says, well, gosh, if you're this zealous for faith and for the Lord, you're going to go into the ministry, right? What's the ministry? Define the ministry. And everybody's,
Right.
you're going to go to church work. And so I was one of those kids that would probably have been one of them voted least likely to do anything, go to college, go to anything. And it's funny, you look back and 40 years later, I ended up going to college. I ended up going to graduate school. I ended up getting a doctorate, ended up writing a book and all this stuff. But the one place I swore, and if you know me, no, I'm not an academic person. My real identity is, in a big way, I'm a machinist. I'm a gear maker. And I got challenged. God called me back to the family business, which was incredibly dysfunctional. A quarter barrel of beer in the lunchroom fridge, pornography everywhere. And my wife and I thought, well, God's calling us back here for maybe 2 years, 5 years at the most. And this year we celebrate year 30.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And it's been an incredible faith journey to see how, the way I put it is, my hole in my faith was, could God work in a blue collar business? Could he help my family? And when I was in California, I was actually a youth pastor in a large mega church, went on a lot of mission trips. We've been involved in Honduras, Mexico, number of different places. And I could see God working all these really cool things, inner city LA and in Tijuana and these different countries. But could God actually work in my family, right? I think that's a challenge a lot of us have. It's easier often to go out away from these places that wounded us so deeply, which, right? And so I often say that I think God brings us, I had a mentor who would say that God often returns us to the scene of the crime. And I'm like, oh. And you look at, right? And you look at scripture, though, and you see it. You see Moses, you see Apostle Paul, you see these instances over and over where God brings people back to where he really grew them up, and it was painful. And he wants us to be back in those situations too.
And oftentimes when we're trying to run away, especially, like, what is it that we need to deal with? Who is it that we need to become to be able to be back in those situations? And I know I've been working through a lot of forgiveness myself, and just being able to say good morning to someone is actually, a big accomplishment. And when it doesn't feel like I have to try, where it's actual forgiveness, it's like, whew, it feels much better.
And I still have those situations I'm dealing with, whether it's extended family or people in our own city that we grew up with. Times I have to forgive myself.
Right. That's the big one.
Yeah. And I think it's easier. Let me qualify that. When we can get out of our home places, but when we have to deal with the people that knew us so many years ago, it's been a fascinating journey that I'm still here. And now it's to the point I can't ever imagine leaving, because this has become such a happy, safe place for us to see the growth.
Do you think that when you and your wife felt that it was that 2 to 5 year journey, do you think that in a way that was God's way of being like, I'm going to kind of protect you from the reality? Like, would you have come back if you knew it was 30?
Oh my gosh, no. I think I think he totally baited us.
Yeah, right. That does happen.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it had to do with, I didn't want to even admit that it could be longer. I had no interest in the family business, right? And I couldn't see the possibilities. One of my life verses I've been camping out really on, especially the last year, but for quite a while, is in Ephesians 3, when Paul says, now to him who is able to do immeasurably more than all we could ask or even imagine. That's pretty powerful, but the part that we always leave out, according to his power at work within us. He's going to do phenomenal things, but it's got to be through us. And in order to get to that point, there's often a lot of growth, a lot of healing, a lot of stuff that needs to grow and change in us. So that's why back then I couldn't imagine being here for 30 years now. I would run even further away. I was already in California. I think I would have jumped on a boat.
Yeah. So then after you came back, what happened? What changed?
Well, I actually did my master's project as a field study to come back. If you bring kingdom values into a very dysfunctional business, family business, there's a lot of different overlapping systems. There's not only my parents and my sister, there's employees. I'm the youngest of 4 children. I'm the only boy. So it was this experiment. I don't have much power in the family as the youngest, but as the family business manager, I can set the values. I can set the culture, right? And anytime you try to change a culture, systems theory says you're going to get a lot of resistance. You're going to get sabotage. It's going to be hell. And I often say the first 2 years were hell, and then it got worse. Because everybody wants you to be the way they remember you, and everybody has, a way of relating to you that fits their maybe their dysfunction, their agenda.
Right.
And when you change, that threatens that. So out of the 17 employees, I think only 1 didn't tell me off, and either didn't explode at me, accuse me. We had 3 employees that tried to, they did start their own business by stealing computer records and just being incredibly unethical. So it was excruciating. The stress, the frustration, the depression, the anger, it just brought up all this junk in me that I didn't know was there. Brought up stuff in my wife that we didn't know was there. So at the 10-year mark, just to give your audience a little snapshot, we finally took a real honeymoon at 10 years. And Tracy, my wife, she was going to tell me later, she told me later that she was going to announce on this trip that she was leaving, that she couldn't tell. I couldn't take anymore. We had 3 young boys at the time. And that was kind of the low point, of the journey. But you look back, it was downhill. I mean, literally for 10 years that we kept thinking, how this has got to turn around. It's got to get better. And there's little victories in the midst of that, but not to a point where I'm like, oh my gosh, this is great. I just love being here. It took a long time to get to that point.
So was the business profitable during this time? And like the stress wasn't necessarily financial stress. It was other things that were just in conflict with your core values, in conflict with where you saw the potential for the business to be.
Yep.
Is that what I'm hearing?
Yep, correct. We were blessed with profitability. We're a custom gear manufacturer, so we're not a big production shop, and there's a huge market for what we do. So the values that my dad built the business on, quality, value, and service, were rock solid, and we had a great customer base. The business model was wonderful, but like a lot of businesses in the trades and manufacturing, huge labor crisis for literally 20 years or more. I mean, even going back even further. So we had plenty of customers, we had plenty to work, but to get people to work together and to put systems in place where it was open communication and honesty and integrity and a commitment to excellence and treating each other with respect, getting rid of the quarter barrel, getting rid of the pornography. All of that was just excruciating. And the work actually compounded it because we had so much work.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, so I'm trying to envision this because really you weren't just creating culture change in your company, you were changing. I mean, this would have been more typical back then, right? Like if people were to go from your shop to somebody else, it would have been the culture shock if you changed.
Yeah.
Because really, this was the way you did business.
Correct.
So people are looking at you like, why? This is working. It's what everyone else does. Why?
Well, and even give you a little bit more insight into it. Every day, my dad would go out to the local bar for lunch, and a few employees would go with him. Every Friday, I think 3/4 of the shop would go with him. And so they would drink, and the local bartender had the beer set up on the bar. They'd come down for lunch, drink 4 beers, get back to work at 1, even after having 4 beers. And then at 2:30, the day would typically be over for a lot of them, and they party literally from 2:30 to 5, 6, 7 o'clock. And you'd go to tool shows, machine shows, and there'd be the young ladies scantily clad, and people are going to strip clubs, and that was a lot of the culture for a lot of the shops back in the, if we go back to the early 80s and 70s, 80s, and early 90s. So you're right. Changing that. It's been 30 years and I still get people every once in a while that come like, yeah, I remember coming in with your dad. You guys still got the quarter barrel? Like, dude, that was a long time ago, but no. But you're right. There's been a tremendous cultural shift just in how people do business today, which I think is fantastic in a lot of ways, because integrity and excellence has to stand better.
Yeah, so you were leading that for the company, but it would have, I mean, the amount of resistance. Whew.
Yeah. Well, and a couple of my dad's, his closest employees were his drinking buddies. Right. So I think back then, more than half of our staff were alcoholics. So and they were not happy that we got rid of the quarter barrel. I mean, free beer and all that. So and I think that's, as believers, we are called to be on that cutting edge of setting culture.
I love that.
Yeah.
Love that idea. I mean, could you even imagine where the business would be today if you hadn't gone through that level of resistance?
Well, my wife and I are convinced my dad would have sold the business. He was trying to sell it at the time anyway, because he was starting to have some health issues. But I wouldn't be here for sure. And I don't think Edgerton Gear would have existed at all. And I question, and here's the really interesting thing, because I was so frustrated and angry for so long, and I've had to go through a lot of healing myself with great mentors and so on. My wife and I both went through a lot of counseling to help us sort through all this. But one thing we realized that I'm so grateful for the whole experience and the pain and the journey is, my dad's dad died a homeless person on the streets of Chicago, right? And so my dad's experience of a father was, he just didn't have much of a dad. And so my dad was trying to figure out what that looked like. And so he did better than my grandpa. He took us to another level, but that generational alcoholism, which is prevalent on both sides of my family, it needed to stop. It needed to end. And so what I'm grateful for is, again, coming back to the scene of the crime, God had to intervene and say, is it going to stop with you or not? Right. And I think a lot of us who grow up in dysfunctional situations, we have to make that decision. Will it stop with me? Am I going to continue this legacy of whatever addiction and dysfunction? So the really cool thing is I have 3 sons. They're all grown. All 3 are believers, married great gals, or grandparents now. But we openly talk as a family, what's our legacy going to be now? Right. And I don't know what God would have done if we didn't come back. We would have been obviously doing something else, but could we have really gotten in touch with our dark side of our family if we weren't here facing it?
That's huge stuff. You changed the legacy. And then I know, I mean, really, we haven't had much time to dig into the craftsman's creed that you have and that course. And so is that part of what your kids look at as part of the legacy, or is that really your calling still?
Oh, it's my all three of my sons are into it.
Very cool.
So just for your audience, the crafts, we started a craftsman with character course where we had a, again, hiring crisis. And 10 years ago, we started a course because we were struggling with how to get young people into the trades and manufacturing. And I was up at our local high school one day, and they're doing a referendum, and they said, "Could you help us, upgrade our tech ed department?" And while I was up there, I feel like God spoke to me and said, "Take a look at these kids, that are not your, they're, I call them the lost shop kids, right? They're the kids that don't fit in a lot of the traditional classrooms, but they really are great working with their hands, and we tend to overlook those students."
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I felt like God said, "Take a look. These kids are you, and where are they going to go, and what other opportunities?" So the idea came to develop this course that brings them into our shop 4 days a week for an hour and a half, where they job shadow. And then 1 day a week, I developed this curriculum that works on character development and soft skills, and kind of deconstructing their worldview of what they believe and why. And I had to take out all the religious language because it's accepted by the public schools. And that course has done more to change our company than anything I've done in 30 years. We've taken 10 students at a time. At the end of the course, maybe one or two of them are interested in staying at Edgerton Gear. We put them through internship, youth apprenticeship. But the cool thing, we've got a number of businesses involved in the community now. So when the kids come in, they get to job shadow in an auto mechanics place with plumbers, with HVAC guys, and really just kind of set them on a course and to explore where they might want to go in life. And now the course is expanded where I'm teaching at a Frito-Lay plant in Beloit with a foundry and a couple other places. And I think everybody's looking at this generation saying, how do we help them? How do we help these kids find a place?
Right, exactly. These kids want to work. I have a totally different perspective. I'm not the, sure, maybe they are ghosting. Maybe they do show up for an interview and then ghost. But to be honest, we've created a space where they're like, you're not even worth my time. Or I know I'm not the right fit. Why should I even bother showing back up? Like, maybe we could develop their communication to the point where they can say to us, hey, thank you for the interview. I'm not interested. But they're kind of like, it's not worth my time. I'm just not even going to text back. But it doesn't mean they're all bad. Like we've got this, like, let's develop the character of those that are interested in working and help them in ways that they haven't been helped before.
You're right. And I think our society is so broken. And years ago, a lot of the tech ed departments were shut down, and we don't know how to reach these kids, and we don't know how to introduce them to what opportunities are out there. And millennials have always been ripped on, but what I found in my shop, if you put them in the right environment and you give them the tools, they are so much better at communication, and they're so, community and relationally, they're so much more healthy. They need mentoring. They want to be mentored.
They want it.
But it can't just be, well, I want to mentor you just so I can make money off you. They need to know that you really care. And when they know you care, once they understand you care, they're phenomenal.
100% agree with this. This is my experience. And I feel like we can make just such a small difference in the world when there's so many that are crying, and not physically crying maybe, but just internally, not even knowing that this is what they're looking for because they don't know where to find it.
Exactly. And that's where our Craftsman course is so exciting to me, because we're finding businesses literally all over the country who have this heart. And this is where I think, from a faith perspective, awesome. I really believe that the Holy Spirit is moving in a lot of blue collar folks. And I'm going to be honest, I think the church is not being as impactful as it needs to be. Schools 100%. Are struggling. And I think God looks at, like, okay, who are the unsung potential heroes, right?
Love this.
Who are the unsung potential heroes that could really change our culture? And I am meeting so many on fire business people who are saying, just tell me what I can do for kids. And they don't want to mentor just to solve their hiring crisis. They say, I don't care if I get kids out of this program or not. I just want to help kids. I want to be able to do something to help this next generation. And that's just awesome to me.
Dave, I'm so in love with what you're presenting, because I've always believed that business is an amazing vehicle to create,
Exactly.
some amazing things. I have some kind of a sentence around here somewhere. I can't remember what I wrote down, but it's along those lines of like, business
Yeah.
is a vehicle that could be used as a tool to create this culture change and to create this shift in people's lives, and really to help people empower them, and as leaders grow in companies, then they can turn around and help other people. And really, this is the best leadership that we're seeing.
I look across our landscape, and I literally, in my mind's eye, I see an army of untapped potential, of folks who really want to do something significant for these kids. And so one of my messages when I speak, I spoke at a university recently, and the title of they wanted me to talk on how do you build a sustainable workforce. And the answer is we need to develop mentoring cultures within our businesses, right? And I just spoke again last week to a group, and I said, when I started this course 10 years ago, our average age in our shop was in the mid 40s, mid to upper 40s. Right. 10 years later, they'd all be in their 50s, middle, upper 50s, like a lot of shops are. Since we started this course, our average age in our shop is now 28.
Yeah.
And people are like,
that's appropriate, right?
Yeah. And it was kind of funny. The one guy who hosted the event, he said, so Dave, at the end, he said, so tell us, do you have a bunch of job postings, for all your positions in your shop? And I looked at him, I like, no. He's like, so do you have like a waiting list of people that want to work there? And I go, and then I clued in what he was saying. I go, yeah, we actually do. And he just sat back and he went, huh. And he just let it hang there. And you see all these other business owners like, what? You have, you're fully staffed, and you have a waiting list. And that's where a lot of people are at. A lot of businesses, they are just in crisis mode. And there's no silver bullet. We need to develop mentoring cultures and bring these kids in and develop them.
I want to throw a lot of stuff at you that's been rattling around in my head, and maybe it's not a lot, but it feels big.
Okay.
So and get your feedback and your response on this, because so right now you and I are in alignment on this, and the idea right now that there's so many people that can't find employees, or that are struggling to find employees. I get it. It's not working to put an ad out there to bring people in, or if you are bringing people in, or if you are getting a lot of interviews or resumes, either they're not the right fit, or they're ghosting, after they show up for a day. But then I was talking to somebody who was involved in the local tech college, and she said that that she's hearing from business owners that they want the schools to create more structure, because they think that that's what the kids are missing, is more structure. And that's how they're going to show up better, is if the school systems present more structure. And I was like mind blown, because I'm like, these kids need more freedom in terms of like, they already have so much to give. Yeah. And are we really showing up in a way that is built for them? And I feel like there's this business owner mentality sometimes of like, I'm the one providing the job, I'm paying you, you should show up because you should just be happy that there's money. And that's not what's motivating people. I mean, again, this is my perspective that's just like bottled up inside right now, because I really see this younger generation that's like, I can turn that computer on faster than you can, and I can fix your problem. Yep. And you want me to show up the way you want me to show up. Yeah. And then you want to change the education system based on what you think the problem is. Are we asking the right people? Are we asking the right questions?
Not even close. Because, and you obviously know I have an opinion about everything.
This is great.
I often say that no matter how old you are, no matter where you live, no matter your race, your ethnicity, your religion, everything, we are all wired purposely to need two things. And that's a sense of purpose, no matter how old we are, right? You look at people that retire, they still need a sense of purpose. These kids need a sense of purpose. Right. We need to know that we can make a contribution to the world. And the other thing, and along with that, we need relationship. We need healthy community. We need to have quality friendship, that people that care for us. So when you put those two things together and you look at this generation that's feeling so lost, and our society is so broken, which even heightens that awareness or that need for relationship and purpose.
Right. Belonging, a sense of belonging.
Yeah, it's even greater than ever with the shutdown and so on. So if you have kids that are so broken in this environment, and you you pull them in and make them adhere to your structure without them knowing that you really care. They are so desperate to fit in somewhere. It's funny when I teach the class, I always ask the kids, this is year 9. It's always the same answer. I say, guys, if you have a tremendous sense of purpose, you could cure for cancer or some great, incredible invention or whatever, but you have no one to share it with. What do you say? And they said, what's the point? And they get that, right? What's the point? We need to have that friendship. So I said, now flip it around. What if you have incredible friends, you just have a blast with them, people who care for you, but they have no sense of purpose? Just imagine that you're with your friends. You have no sense of purpose. For 9 years, it's always the same answer. I said, what do you have? Trouble. We get in trouble. And that's from them saying that. They get it. They know they need that sense of purpose and being in a healthy relationship.
They just create trouble.
Yeah. So back to your question, structure. Well, yeah, but they need to know we care, right? And when we bring the kids in, we do shape them. We do demand that they adhere to our values. I mean, we often say it's my house, my rules. And take your hands out of your pocket, pull the hoodie off, look us in the eye, be respectful. But they respond to that because they know we care. I've had kids who say that are graduate through our program. We turn them into youth apprentices, now they're adult apprentices, and 22 years old, they're saying, why would I ever leave here? Because this is family to me. And I think and the schools and the businesses are struggling because we're looking at skills, we're looking at not even really aptitude. We're just looking for them to be workers. They need to know we care. Right. And so that's where I'm coming from is when these kids know you care, you got to earn that right to be heard. Right. Yeah. So I think that's and it's not that hard. Apprenticeship has been around for thousands of years, but somehow in our high tech, rapid paced culture, we've lost that sense of connection and friendship with these kids.
So interesting. I was just talking to another young person that's, quitting the current job and then looking for what's next, and he'd like to move into the trades. Yeah. And he doesn't even know where to start. He doesn't even know how, he puts in a couple applications at a couple of the places that seem a little obvious, or maybe the ones that have the job postings. The structure that's missing is how do you actually get a job in real life that's not just, go to college, but then what's next?
Well, we're missing the on-ramp, right?
Yeah.
And so when actually I just had a long talk with a friend of mine yesterday that works with vets getting out of the military when they're 22, 23, 24. And he said, could we use there's got to be an overlap because we're seeing the same thing. These kids get out of the military, they get out of high school. No idea what's out there. No idea what opportunities, where they might fit. So the craftsman course, there's this job shadowing element that allows them to see all different trades, all different opportunities, all different businesses. And we're in a youth apprenticeship. We love youth apprenticeship. We love adult apprenticeship. But I often say that we're throwing the businesses and the kids together like a blind date. We don't. Kids don't know if they're going to like that. Businesses don't know if they're going to like the kids. So by allowing people to explore the opportunities while we're working on their character and showing them the soft skills that they need to be successful, by the time they finish the course, going, oh yeah, I want to be a heavy equipment operator. I want to be a machinist, and then we can guide them into those careers without spending $200K on a college degree that might be very useless for what they're interested compared to what they're interested in. But we're so focused on test scores and four-year universities and so on that we're not looking at the kids as individuals, saying, where would you best fit, in the world, and the world needs you. That's that's number 4 in our Craftsman Code. The world's needs me, and which I haven't gotten into, but our Craftsman Code number 1 is I'm not the center of the universe, right? And you make the kids
and then
memorize
number 4
that.
is the world needs me. I love it.
Yeah. And number 2 is I don't know everything nearly as much as I think I do. And it's not a smackdown for the kids. It's just it's helping them understand that our society and our industries are built on the shoulders who came before us. So have some respect for the past and always be a learner. God's made you with very unique skill sets and an aptitude that only you can fulfill. We just have to figure out where you fit. Right. So.
And then 3. What's 3?
there's dignity and purpose in knowing my trade. Because again, we look at jobs, some jobs, we have this hierarchy in our mind that some jobs are more prestigious or valuable than others. No, and I think COVID has shown all of us that every job is essential. You take one peg out of the supply chain, the whole thing crumbles. And so helping kids, and in our society, we always make fun of the plumbers and other people, the blue collar folks. We're just, I go back to, you may remember the old, the Roseanne show with Roseanne Barr. Some of these the way they media and TV and Hollywood portray blue collar folks is disgusting. But that's what the kids grow up on. So we have to kind of retrain them that, man, there's dignity in being a truck driver, a lumberjack. I mean, there's so many different jobs. So it's restoring that sense of dignity.
I used to hire for so many of those positions, and the people that were applying, they did respect their roles. Maybe the outside perspective and, like you say, society and the media is portraying them as not, but within the community, they have so much respect for each other. And I love to see that. It doesn't matter if you're carrying a hammer or, how to use a toolbox or if you're getting in the truck. But so I want to go back to the comment that you made about like this vision that you have of all these business owners, and they are wanting to step up and help and solve some of this. Where do you see yourself in that now?
Well, for me, I'm turning 60 soon, and my last phase of life, the way I see it, is how can I facilitate that? How can I help other businesses and schools implement a program like this? So that's where I'm spending a good part of my time right now, is helping businesses like Frito-Lay, for instance. When they decided down here in Beloit, Wisconsin, to take it on, they said that they have 1,300 maintenance mechanics nationwide in their 31 plants, right? They said a full 2/3 of those could retire in the next 5 years.
Ooh.
So that's just one corporation, right? So there is a tremendous crisis, nationwide, if not globally. So they said, they took on the course, my gosh, we have to put this everywhere. So my passion is, how can we help other businesses and communities replicate this? The interesting thing is, when I talk to businesses, everybody's all in. Guess who's reluctant? Can you guess where the roadblock is?
The schools?
Schools.
Ouch.
Over and over and over. They think they got their own thing. Yeah, we do apprenticeship. We do this. We do that. I have one community I'm working with now. I have 4 large businesses within 3 blocks of each other. They're saying, we want this. We need to do this. How do we do it? We've gotten a hold of the superintendents in their district. Now we're good. We got stuff going on. And I'm going, but why am I getting calls then from your 4 businesses in your school district if you've got it, if you're doing fine? And I don't want to come down too hard on the schools. They have a lot going on. They have a lot of stress. It's so driven by test scores and finances and so on. But if you took an honest look at the data, how many of your youth apprentices are actually completing that, right? And I think in a lot of areas it's less than 50%. How connected are these kids really getting into your communities? How well are they finding their career path instead of just shoving them off to a 4-year university? But then we find a school like Beloit Memorial, and they're just like, oh my gosh, this is great, because not all kids are meant to go to 4-year university.
Right.
I'm just kind of waiting for God to keep. And the funny thing is, I'm not advertising. I'm not looking for opportunities, but I'm getting, at least a call or email every week. Hey, can we do this? I got 2 courses starting in Houston in January. We're trying in several places in Milwaukee, the Green Bay area, Beloit, obviously. In our own county, we'll probably have 3 different courses going on.
So who's facilitating the courses then? Is it the business owners, or how is that working?
So the way it has to happen is, because we know the schools are reluctant, we look at that business that has the credibility in the community, that can get other businesses on board. And then ideally that business hosts the course and kind of helps coordinate with the school district where the kids get the job shadow. But we got to get the kids off the school campus, because if you remember back when we were teenagers, you get the Charlie Brown voice going on with your parents and with the teachers, but you step into a professional manufacturing or a trade environment with older adults, you're all ears. and you're
Right,
respectful.
right,
You're
right.
intimidated. You want to learn. And that's where we found out part of the magic is that you host it at one of the businesses. And then the job shadowing part of it, that's the other magic. The kids start developing relationships with these wonderful people that really want to make a difference and invest in these kids.
This is amazing. So when you're thinking about what's next and sharing this message, and is there anything else that you would love for people to know that we haven't expressed already?
I think we covered a lot of it. I think the big thing to me is that the blue collar segment of our society doesn't grasp how impactful that we really are, how important that
Mm,
we are to our communities. The media doesn't give us a lot of props. We're often taken for granted and overlooked. And even in our churches, I mean, I think a lot
right.
of times working people are looked at as just the checkbook for our churches. And I don't mean to
Mhm.
be too negative about it, but that's been my personal experience. And
Right.
in reality, the pastors and so on in the churches, they're supposed to equip people like us. We're the
Mhm.
bedrock of our communities. We are the change agents in our community. We really are the ones that, quote, do the work of the ministry of bringing the kingdom into every aspect of our community. So whatever job you have, wherever God's got you planted, I think we totally underestimate the power of God's goodness in our lives to change our businesses. And you don't have to be a business owner, just a person working in the business. We all have this
Mhm.
incredible sphere of influence that we can be incredibly impactful, but we just don't believe it, right?
Yeah.
I think we tend to overlook it and realize, well, what can I do? I'm just one person.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely speaking truth there. And we recently dug into the life languages personality assessments. I know
Yeah.
you've
Yep.
done some. I don't know if you knew that one, but
I was
the life
actually on Gary
languages.
Chapman's podcast last
No
year.
way. Just thinking about the different voices and the different languages that people speak, and recognizing that when you said, that the blue collar sometimes isn't given a voice, or they don't speak up and have a voice. There's some
Yeah.
professions that it's easier to hear them. Maybe there's more of a
Right.
sales
Yeah.
profession, or someone that's out there in the community because they're more of a relationship based business, a financial
Yeah.
advisor or something
Yep.
like that. If they wear a suit, or if they're a professional, considered an
Really good
expert in
point.
their field,
Yeah.
versus this quiet force that's the doers, just quietly making things happen,
Yeah. Yeah.
or contemplators, that are thinking about all the things that could
Yeah.
be changed, but just not speaking up very loudly. And so, um, I love to see everyone's gifts and talents and how they can be used.
Yeah.
And I do agree that there are so many that are just not as vocal
Yep.
and,
Yep.
and yet
Yep.
have a presence, and that presence is
Exactly.
very impactful. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, even in our course when I started it 9 years ago, I asked within my own shop, hey, do I have any volunteers that would want to be mentors?
Right.
Just have a kid looking over your shoulder for 90 minutes a day. And I had one gentleman, just really rough, broken life. I mean, he really has been through it on a lot of levels. And he timidly came up to me after. He goes, well, I'd like to be, but I have nothing to
Right.
offer, right?
Right.
Well, for 9 years,
Mm,
guess who's one of the kids' favorite mentors, right?
that's so awesome.
And he's an introvert. He's very much just one on one, very very quiet.
Right.
But that one on one interaction is which that's where relationships really happen.
Hmm.
Um, and that just reminds me, it doesn't matter who you are. You are impactful much more so than you realize. Just
Right.
like you said,
Right.
your presence. And I talk about theology of presence. If the Spirit of God is in us, we cannot help but to be impactful and make a difference in those around us.
Yeah, absolutely. I love to think about it as, if we're at a funeral of a close friend or something, there really isn't anything we can do to make the
Right,
situation better. Especially
right.
for doers, that can be a challenge, right?
Yep,
You're a hands-on
yep,
person and you're just like, oh, I feel like I can't do anything.
yeah,
But your presence, your being, who you are, your character, what you stand for,
yep,
that's all they need. That's all they want, right?
yep,
Maybe there's, a hug, so there's some touch, like, or something like that. But really what means the most is who you are, and that
yeah.
you're showing up.
Well, and the other thing that I would add to it is we give who we are.
Mm,
So I think we all have issues. We all have our addictions. We all
right.
have our wounds. And I think we also fail to realize that as we strive to walk with God, as we strive to be who He called us to be, and all the garbage in our lives gets exposed and dealt with, we become healthier. And
Right.
and then God can, working through a cleaner vessel. And it really, it kind of adds another level of, I'm not sure what the word is, responsibility or motivation. Say, you know what? I need to get my act together. I need God to really clean me up because there's so many broken people around me. I've got an older friend that we were meeting with last year. We were just chatting, and I said, Larry, and Larry is just man of the year in his community, and just incredible stuff. He's adopted kids. He's on all these boards with just everywhere. And when you get to know him personally, he's in the middle of so many messes. It just blows your mind. And it's so frustrating for him. I said, Larry, do you ever consider that the longer we walk with God, the bigger the messes he calls us to?
Oh, no.
He goes, that's exactly it. But you think of it, right? The longer we walk with God and we can strive to be faithful and a good steward of all that he gives us, he's going to say to what Jesus talks about this in the parables, he's going to give us more. And giving us more doesn't mean more vacations and more material wealth and more ease and comfort. He's going to give us more to steward, and that means bigger messes.
Oh man, a future to look forward to.
Exactly. and it goes right along lines when you read the Gospels and you read the New Testament, there's this element of suffering, right?
Yeah.
Anybody who wants to live a godly life will suffer, will be persecuted. And I think suffer is probably the better way of saying that, because to love and to be that vessel of goodness, we have to take on all this. We have to be in the midst of all the garbage of our world, right? We can't address it from the outside.
Fringe.
We have to be in the midst of it, right? We can't be fringe people. Exactly.
Right.
So we have to be willing to stand there and take the hits and the accusations. And, our model is our Savior, right? So and you start incorporating all these character qualities of what God's goodness looks like. I mean, being humble and trustworthy and respectful and all of that. Boy, that's where the rubber meets the road, and we're at work every day to live all of that out. And that's when people go, whoa, there's something different about how you're living your life and how you do your job. And I think that's what gets me excited. That's what excites me, because I think the kingdom is so relevant. Well, and we didn't even mention my book. In fact,
I was going to ask. Yeah.
Good Work: How Blue Collar Business Can Change Lives, Communities, and the World. And if anybody wants to email me or get a hold of you, I'd gladly send a book, because I just believe so strongly in what God wants to do in us and through us.
That is super awesome. Thank you so much for that gift. And we will definitely share that. And I appreciate it. I know my son read the book and really liked it. So
cool.
You're definitely changing lives already. Dave, it has been such a pleasure to dig into all of these concepts and thoughts and
my
sharing.
Pleasure.
Really.
Yeah.
You're a thought leader in an industry that needs it. So I appreciate that.
Well, appreciate the opportunity and what you're doing. We need to do more of this, right?
Yeah. Get the word out there. Well, thank you. And we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Jamie.